Hello, everyone. This is Ryan Christman with the RealitySeeker podcast. I am joined today by Pam Werner, who is the Director of Peer Support for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Say hello, Pam.
Hello. Great to be here.
I'm also joined by Mary Bourgeois, who is a member of the RealitySeeker philosophy group.
Hi, glad to be here.
And Carmencita Pinckney, who's another member of our group.
Hello, nice to be here.
Let's just ask a question and get started. This is the first time I've ever done this. I had a question for Pam, which was, what is the relationship between peer support and philosophy? Like I was just saying a minute ago, I got interested in philosophy and then I saw some application of it to peer support. And I'm wondering if you see some of those same applications, like what your perspective is on that. Does peer support have its own philosophy?
I think philosophy in general is really interesting when you combine it and you look at it with peer support. And when I think of philosophy, I'm looking at what's a theory or what's the attitude that somebody might have, or organizations that provide peer support. And what it really is their guiding principle of philosophy. And to me, when I think of really looking deeply at philosophy, it really comes back to wisdom and knowledge. It's about thoughts, it's reasoning, it's part of thinking, but it's really wisdom and knowledge where I see peer support really intersecting and having its own philosophy. So when you look at providing peer support, it really is what wisdom are you bringing from yourself to another person, and what is really peerness. And when you take it out of a service system angle and you just look generally at peer support, like say kayaking, if you did peer-to-peer kayaking, then obviously you'd be working with somebody who already knew or wanted to learn about kayaking. If you look at peerness with chronic conditions, I would rather work with somebody who had, say, diabetes. If I have diabetes, I might look for a peer that would have a chronic condition like breast cancer, and I'd want to work with somebody that also had that same chronic condition. I think about all of you that are right now with me on the podcast, and you look at veterans. As a veteran family member, I'd rather talk to another veteran family member or a vet to learn more about what that means. And then you get to where we're at within Michigan, where you look at lived experience and mental health. So all of these distinct roles that I mentioned, the kayaking, the chronic health conditions, veterans supporting veterans, and then individuals supporting other individuals with recovery in mental health and a journey in mental health, it really is based on shared wisdom and knowledge. And those experiences really support the person. So I believe that peer support can be looked at as having its own philosophy if we really look deeper into the peerness and the unique pieces that peers provide each other.
Yeah.
I was curious, when you're a peer support specialist and you're sitting across from another peer that you're providing services to, when you say knowledge, like we are sharing our lived experience, the knowledge that comes from that lived experience, but we're also dealing with another person who has their own story, which is something that we don't have access to the knowledge about that, so like we're required to have sort of a non-judgmental attitude towards letting people express their own story. Could you talk about knowledge in that context?
Yeah, and I think that knowledge in that context is how much knowledge are you going to receive from that person that also has a similar story or a different story. And unless a person shares and they're coming from mutual respect, which is being non-judgmental. If I'm working with someone and I feel like they're going to judge me about something that I've done in the past or something I'm doing currently, then I'm not going to share that, and nobody's going to gain any knowledge about each other. And that's where peer support is super powerful. Is that you working with the person that understands and operates from a peer support point of view, that's a really good peer specialist, a listener, someone who doesn't judge. If we all have our own feelings and beliefs, that those are like put aside when you're working as a peer. So I think the knowledge of not judging really opens up somebody wanting to tell you more about them. And knowledge to me is like a two-way street. So if I'm non-judgmental and somebody is sharing their story with me or they're sharing their perspective, if I'm a really good listener and strong in my values and beliefs of peer support, I'm going to gain knowledge from them. And that's what is really powerful about a peer-to-peer journey, is that you're really sharing and giving knowledge to each other. And that just ends up making both individuals stronger in their beliefs and stronger in the acceptance that they have for each other.
Mary or Carmen, do you have a question? Or
No, I'm in agreement with what Pam just said, but I would also put in there, it kind of, I call it, it's a win-win. And I tell people when I'm helping them, they're actually helping me. So I extend it to that point. But Pam is right. And I respect you very much. So just so you know, I hold you up to the highest of all respect, because I would not have gotten as far as I am, including dealing with my own illnesses and chronic migraines, had it not been for you and your program up in Lansing, for us to constantly meet other people, see it in the network, and then we're all helping each other. So I believe my philosophy for life is sometimes I have to take it back to the old ways or the old way of thinking versus the new way, which sometimes we know medication is only 10%. The rest of it is 10% of how what happens and 90% of what we do. So I kind of use my own philosophy is to keep me going, but what made me stronger is the peer support, as well as the training that we get from and the vast knowledge from everyone that contributes. So I think for me, I use the philosophy of what I've had before, what I've learned in the past, and what I'm learning and continue to go to training, which is great. But then I also share it so that way I keep myself accountable for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not always so good about holding myself accountable to me. And I have a close relationship with a certified peer in the outpatient mental health at the Battle Creek VA. And when I'm starting to not use the non-pharmacological tools in my wellness toolkit, she's like, "Now, Mary," and she does it so gently. She just kind of, she's not judging. She's not critical. It's just like she and I have shared a common journey. She knows what's in my toolbox. I know what's in my toolbox. My favorite tool is the sledgehammer, when sometimes just the dental pick would be more appropriate. So that's how I find peer support very beneficial.
Well, I think both of those responses really add to the question that Ryan just brought up. And when I listen to both of you speak, and I think about when we go to retreat centers where you have common conversations with people, that in your example, Mary, with the person that you're working with, it really is about being non-judgmental.
Yeah.
And I think when people aren't peers and they're more judgmental, then they end up looking more at the disability. They look more at the, parts of what people need to be doing to stay healthy and well. But that's that person's perspective.
Exactly.
And when we're not judgmental, I think we look more at the person as being human, not as a disability. That we look at what that person's gifts or talents or the uniqueness they bring to a relationship, instead of focusing on a negative event. So if people are not non-judgmental, if they start judging others, they really can't say that they're a strong person that understands peer support principles and practices, because really the foundation is as being non-judgmental. And I think both of you just said that too.
I think in the veteran community is a lot of us are still in our, I call it manipulation of addiction. And it's sad because we're doing a disservice to the veterans that need help now, especially with COVID, and can't get into the VA. But my thing is, I'm here to help. Whatever I learn is for me to share, not hoard it to myself. And I'm never going to think that I'm better than anybody, because truth be told, I'm struggling myself. So
Right.
I think that with veterans itself, we need to literally look at the CEUs that you give. And we as veterans and those that are employed, because I'm no longer working, but I still support other veterans in trying to help them get their service connection benefits, as well as kind of share the journey of mental, I don't want to say illness, but the crutch of the mental side of it. But we get stronger together. But when we're sitting up here trying to struggle and help each other, or it's about me, no, it's not about me. It's about a we, and how can we help each other to grow, as well as to get stronger and to support each other so that we're not losing another veteran when a lot of us are committing suicide. So it's just about, no matter where you're at, as long as you're a peer support, or if you have some information, share that information so that that other person can gain strength.
Yeah.
Would you say that part of the philosophy is coming from a perspective of we versus me? And that really philosophically, that's where peers come from, as they look at collaboration and what everybody can do to help each other be just better?
Absolutely.
Very true.
Yeah,
I-
definitely.
I have to keep myself in therapy as well. I can't just sit up here and be a peer and not use philosophy or anything else that I'm learning, or communication with other peers, to not only share, but to gain that strength that I need to keep me going as well.
Yeah. As veterans, we're like taught soldiers don't cry, and you've got to put out this strong facade, and that is like such a crock of baloney. And when the peer shares and encourages and is accepting, like, I've been venting so much yesterday, and I can call up my peer Sue, and like, I can tell her things that if I told a psychiatrist, I would end up in the psych ward. And she just starts laughing and like, yeah, I got your back. I hope you have good dreams tonight. And by recognizing that we're all fragile and we're all human and we're sharing that common struggle, I have the answers within myself. It's just I question myself so much that I'm not adequately facing, I'm not defining myself as who I am to myself. I'm taking false narratives from outside, and then I don't measure up, and I doubt myself, and I start to stumble, and she just helps me not be sucked into that rabbit hole.
Because she's non-judgmental.
Yeah.
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 Pam, you talked about the me versus we, and kind of a theory when we started the group was the idea that reason as a form of judgment can somehow constrain or confine things. And I was like, when you talk about like going from the me to the we, or like finding knowledge in your relationship with other, like that's more where we were trying to focus our discussion. And I'm just wondering about your thoughts with that, because like I've always seen peer support as kind of almost like a completely different community development model that's different than some of the rational systems that you would normally, the way they would approach things.
Right. And so, I mean, the one thing that really sticks out is the word support. And when you talk about peer support and you look at how we all define support, it really doesn't come out as black and white or rational or irrational. It's just what it says is support, and where people together define that mutuality. And it's really about mutuality and making things work and supporting the person to find their inner wisdom.
Right.
And I think that that's the power of what peers do, is to really work at helping a person find their inner wisdom versus giving them the answers.
We've been talking about relativism a lot lately, and it's not the most popular thing. Actually, it's fairly popular in our culture, but like, there's still a lot of folks who like the old Enlightenment ideas, and the idea of you have two people and they have conflicting beliefs, and that one person has to have the right belief and the other person has to have the wrong belief. Like, to me, that seems like it doesn't mesh very well with the mutuality that you were just talking about. Mm-hmm. So I just wondered what you thought about that.
Well, I think it doesn't mesh depending on if the peer's a paid peer support in your life versus if it's a friendship that's also based on peer support, but the individuals aren't paid. So for the reality seekers that all of you are, there isn't a situation where you're going in and you're paid to be in someone's life. So you have that mutuality, and there's this ability, I believe, and I think that happens in your group, is for people to have a really great discussion and then come away where at least you're challenging your own thoughts and beliefs. That you're not walking away where this was the set answer. Because that isn't really what life's about, is everybody has their own answer to a certain question, but collectively, the answer of the group, I believe, is where the wisest piece is. It's everybody's inner wisdom together, creating that whole dialogue where everybody feels like they can be part of it. And isn't that philosophy in general? Being able to provide a philosophical viewpoint that's always different than somebody else's.
Carmencita and Mary, how do you think that's developed in our group over the last year?
So you want to go first?
Go ahead, Mary.
I want to develop kind of an analogy, and I know that I can ramble on for a long time. It's easy to say you're wrong because, and the because may or may not be valid. So when I see someone who has a different set of beliefs than I do, they're invested in those beliefs, and they're part of who that person is. And if I say, oh, you're so wrong, then that shuts down the conversation right there. They're gonna go away feeling bad about themselves. They're gonna feel bad about, they're gonna think, what a butthole that person is. If I make myself available, even though I might not agree, if I say, well, just tell me more, eventually I believe that there are more commonalities between people than there are differences. And when I let the other person share their story and we find that commonality and we develop a sincere, authentic relationship, then we're able to establish mutual respect, and hopefully a friendship will develop, maybe not. We're not leaving that situation as enemies out for each other's blood, though. And I feel that's what's missing today. Taking the time to stop and listen to the other person.
And that to me is really key, is the word listening. Because if we don't listen, we don't have mutual respect, because we're not hearing another person's opinion. And I think it's just human nature that when people talk, we're already answering before we've even heard them express whatever their thoughts are. We already have a response. We already have, and one thing that I think is very helpful is if you ask a question to someone and then nobody answers it for a while, that you count to 20. Because when you have that silence, it gives people the opportunity to have permission to think and then be able to respond in a thoughtful way.
Right.
And that is something that we always have to strive for. And it's hard for me. And I believe it's hard for a lot of other people that practice listening.
Yeah.
I actually like the motivational interviewing for that reason, because you do have to listen, especially if you're asking open-ended questions, which I use a lot for. I don't care who it is, rather it's my children, my daughters, who are, the youngest one is now 21, or anybody else. I actually like to ask open-ended questions, and I hopefully it'll stimulate them. But when they're giving their answers, I'm making sure that I'm giving them time to listen and listen, actively listening, not just trying to multitask in between.
It's a very good point.
And as Pam pointed out previously, if it's a paid peer, then that's going to be different than just a more casual kind of a peer. If I'm thinking of like at the Battle Creek VA, there are peers whose sole role is to help veterans find employment or find housing. So that peer has a responsibility to focus in, asking open questions to help the veteran identify where the veteran wants to get eventually, and then figure out the steps to get there based upon not only the peers' knowledge base, but their own experiences and encouragement. I run across so many people who set themselves up for failure simply because they doubt their own abilities, and that's another valuable role of a peer.
I would agree. And do you think that sometimes people doubt their own knowledge and experiences because they're working with someone who's judgmental versus non-judgmental?
Definitely.
I think it's also because a lot of the peers that are working do not go to obtain their CEUs. And that's sad because you're doing a disservice to the veterans. I know there's a few, like Martha Smith is one, and she doesn't work. For some reason, she never got hired into the VA, and she would have been great. But we still communicate even before the peer support. I knew her before then, but it's kind of funny. I met her in 2008, and we still communicate to this day. We do different functions. We'll encourage each other to, hey, there's a training, let's go. And then we're just going. But even when I navigate with other peers in different states, we still contact each other. Even though I'm not working, we pick each other's brain, because it's about seeing what's out here, connecting, and then adding our own beliefs as well as our training to help somebody gain whatever it is they're trying to see. And we all don't know it. I don't know it all. But my attitude is, let me call someone, let me check on this. But I also, in all the different positions of my VA experience with the peer support and in my peer support position, I would make sure that I network with different entities so that I could be the best peer as possible for myself. And when I didn't know, I'm going to ask or even seek. I've called Battle Creek. I still call Savannah. I will deal with some of the peers out here in Detroit, but I don't deal with too many of them because of the way they are. But unfortunately, that's why we need to go to trainings and make sure that we are up on our best, not just for the money of the peer support. And the VA peer supports make the most. But it's about us getting our training so that we can help somebody. And it's not just about the paycheck.
Yeah.
But circling it back to your philosophy, I believe that we need to go back to all the old stuff to sometimes regain that strength that we need to move forward. Yeah. It's not always about medication. The therapist can't always help us. We also have to go into what we believe and what our philosophy of life is.
This is a question for all three of you and myself. we spent a lot of time talking about community development, and we've covered certain ground so far tonight, and I'm wondering of the concepts that we've talked about tonight, like how do you think those relate to creating connections and achieving community development? Like we talked about non-judgmentalness, we talked about mutual support, we talked about a lot of things. Which aspects of the conversation, like, do any of those relate to community development?
Well, I think for a community to develop, to have community development, you have to have mutuality. So I'm not going to want to be part of a community where I feel like I'm being judged, or I'm being told what to do, or someone else is telling me what their wisdom is versus helping me look for how do I define that wisdom. And so philosophically, community partnerships and development are really based on all of the questions that you've asked tonight, Ryan, and it makes communities stronger if there is that whole mutuality and mutual respect. And you see that a lot, I think, with veterans.
I want to ask a follow-up question, and I want to continue on that topic. Again, for everybody, I've tried to go about this to create a philosophy of openness for the reasons that we've talked about tonight. And I find that the only place where I have trouble with that is when I run into a philosophy that wants to define everything up front.
I think that if we get so stuck in our little boxes of precisely defining words, we're going to undermine the establishment of relationship. And to me, relationship is the most valuable component of building a community.
So when we try to describe and define what it's going to be, how do we maintain that ability to be open to relationship, the insight of other people?
Everybody has their own opinion. They have their own view of that. And just the questions that I was asked tonight and the discussion that we're all having, it's you have to work hard at taking away preconceived ideas and answers and listen to the wisdom of the group.
Yeah.
And to me, that's, I think, the hardest part of being human. So we all think our opinion's more important than others. And it's important to kind of check that at the door.
That was our last question. Thank you to Pam, Mary, and Carmencita for participating. That concludes our podcast. If you would like to participate in our ongoing discussions, please contact me at realityseeker3@gmail.com. Have a nice day.